Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Down Syndrome Center podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kishore Valodi, and today we are really excited to have a topic that we touched on a little bit earlier. If those of you who have been listening to the podcast for a long time, we talked about international adoption with Michelle Zaremski from the Reese's Rainbow Group, but we didn't really touch on domestic adoption. And so for that, there is one organization that is very well known within our country called the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network. And today we have with us Stephanie Thompson, who's joining us on the podcast to fill us in a little bit about the organization, about domestic adoption, and just really let all of us know what the different options are out there that maybe we're not even familiar with. And so I'm so excited, Stephanie, to have you join us on the podcast, as we always do with all of our guests. If you could tell me who you are, what you do, and why you love working with people with Down syndrome.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Stephanie Thompson. Yes, I am the director of the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network, which is a program of the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati. And I've been doing this, I think I joined the NDSAN in 2010. And the reason that I do what I do here is I do have a biological son who is 30. And so he was born in 1992, and in 1993, I joined the DSAGC, did many hats that I wore there, and then joined the NDSAN. I've been wearing that hat ever since 2010. And so that is why I do what I do.
That's awesome. So the Down Syndrome Association in Cincinnati is what created this, the NDSAN, the National Down Syndrome Adoption Network. And so it's not a group that just serves one particular region. It serves the entire country, is my understanding. Is that how I should be thinking about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati, I think it was formed in 1981. Well, in 1982, we had a married couple who had already adopted, I think, one or two children by 1982, which was pretty unheard of. And they wanted to create a program because just through phone calls and letters through postal mail, they realized that there was a need. And so they started the program under us. And yes, it is the only national program under the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati who serves counties in the tri-state area, Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a wonderful story. I mean, I think, how is it that this organization keeps on going? Like, how do you guys continue to keep the lights on and keep doing what you're doing, the wonderful work that we're doing that we're going to be talking about?
Well, it keeps going because we do keep getting phone calls from expectant parents and new parents, post-birth, who get that diagnosis of Down syndrome, and they're just in a lot of grief. So as long as our phone keeps ringing with that, and as long as we have folks who call and say, gosh, we feel so called to adopt a child with Down syndrome. And as long as people hear about our wonderful work and go, oh my gosh, can I support this financially? And we'll go, absolutely. So as long as those three things keep happening, we're going to, always be here.
That's wonderful. And I know you are very much, I'm sure, aware of this, but for those of us who are listening, those podcasters who are listening right now, it is the medical training when it comes around prenatal diagnoses and giving the diagnosis to a family. I'll be honest, it's not great. It's not great. And the data shows that. There's been lots of studies that have come out to say that we doctors do not do a very good job of educating families on the different options when they discover that they have a child with Down syndrome, that they're pregnant with a child with Down syndrome. And many times what we hear from families who find out prenatally, but just in general, what the data shows as well, is that doctors tend to push families towards one option, which would be termination of the pregnancy, but very rarely do the families hear about this option we're talking about today, which is adoption, making your child available for adoption after the baby is born. And I guess a question that I can just hear some of my colleagues in medicine asking is it true? Do people really want to adopt a child with Down syndrome? And I don't mean to be offensive when I ask that question. It truly is a question that I have heard from colleagues. So how would you answer that question?
Yes. And, I answer that question pretty much every expectant parent or new parent that calls me considering an adoption plan. They ask that same question.
Okay.
So why would somebody want to adopt my child? And it's very easy. The question or the answer is a lot of our families have either a relationship with a person with Down syndrome, being like a sibling, cousin or extended family, that kind of way, neighbor. I've had, families who babysat the girl with Down syndrome down the street. Church, I watched during service, I watched children, and there was a little boy with Down syndrome and that I cared for. Their occupation, special education teacher, physical therapist, speech therapist. I've had a couple of actually developmental disability doctors who have joined our registry. So, and then we also then have that slice of families who say, I feel so called to do this. I don't have a connection. I don't know why I'm feeling called to do this. I heard about Down syndrome adoption and I found your site, and this is what we're meant to do.
And in your work, do you find that there is a pretty equal match between number of children who are available to be adopted and parents who are looking, or do you find there's a mismatch in one direction or another?
Actually, so the good thing is we can always find a family for a baby with Down syndrome. And, just for a little bit of history, years ago, we used to be called a waiting list. And what that meant was that families were waiting on our registry for a child to be born and for their family to be chosen. Well, what happened was an expectant parent heard that, and she thought that meant she had to wait to place her baby.
Oh.
And so she terminated the pregnancy.
I see.
So how we now describe our program is we have a registry of families who are home study ready and approved to adopt a child with Down syndrome. And for example, I'm working on 2 situations right now, and both families were pretty open. One is a little boy, one's a little girl. They're both going to be born in the spring. And they're like, we're pretty open with families. And because of that, I'm able to send about 15 families each.
Wow.
for the expectant parents to view as a prospective adoptive family. And then they'll go to match, and then at birth, then the baby will be placed with the adoptive family that the birth family chose.
Wow, that's amazing. And how is it, like, your organization, when you're working with a family and you're preparing them for the adoption of a child? So this is the adoptive family, prospective adoptive family saying, what should we expect? How do you prepare them for the adoption of a child with Down syndrome?
The first thing I do is I say, join your local Down syndrome parent group.
Yeah.
They're going to be your best source of information because they will know of local resources. And join their mailing list, get their newsletter, go to any of the workshops, ask them and say, look, I'm not a parent yet, but I'm hoping to be a parent through the help of the NDSAN, and go to those parent workshops that talk about all the different issues. Take every book out of their lending library. Volunteer, that's a huge thing. Hands-on, join the buddy walk, help at workshops with caring for kiddos. Then you've got that hands-on experience. And then I do have a list of webinars that I say, okay, you're going to go to the Global Down Syndrome Foundation or the NDSS or the NDSC. Here's where their webinars are listed. Just in your free time, just start ticking off all the boxes, all the different subjects. And then that way, when they create a family profile, which is kind of visual storybook that will be shown to birth families, they will put that information, because I require every family to state why they want to adopt a child with Down syndrome and what experience they have. And so the birth families can see all of the work that they put into really educating themselves.
That's really great. And I love how the organization focuses so much on preparing that family who is having the baby, and preparing the family who is hopefully adopting the baby. And you had mentioned to me even before we started recording the podcast about information that you share with the families as even before they're giving birth, to kind of talk with them about their options. You want to share a little bit about that resource that you have?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So when an expectant family calls, and a new family if they just had a baby, but when let's focus on expectant families for a minute. When they call us, for them to even reach out and Google Down syndrome adoption, they are in such a state of deep, deep grief, and they're just in this forest and they do not see a way out. So a lot of them are in flight mode. So they're like, I need to get out of this situation. How do I do it? And when they get that prenatal diagnosis, kind of how we talked earlier, actually parenting sometimes isn't even an option. So they get one option, and it's termination.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are families out there that are opposed to that. So they go and they find me on Google. And then, so the first thing I do before we even talk about adoption is we talk about being in grief.
Mm-hmm.
We're grieving, and I remember getting that diagnosis, and I remember it feeling like a death of the child that I had been carrying. So that's what they're calling me during that grieving period. So I sit with them and I say, we're not going to talk about anything but just sit in grief. And so when I feel that they're a little bit lighter and they're starting to come out of that grief a little bit, I say, okay, now let's just talk about what Down syndrome is. And I set them up with some really good resources, up-to-date current resources. And then I say, ask me any questions about it. And then I say, okay, next step, let's just talk about what it would be to parent a child with Down syndrome. So I actually send them a link to their local parent group, and I say, you don't have to contact them. Just look at all the resources that are available to you. Talk to me. I have raised a son who is now into adulthood. I can ask questions across the lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say, okay, so where are you now? And about half decide to parent after having those conversations with me.
Mm.
And then the other half say, thank you so much. We feel fully educated. We feel like we can make a decision now 100% without feeling any resentment or guilt or what, should we have parented? You've educated us. Now it's time for us to choose an adoptive family.
Yes, wonderful. So if you're a family that is either an expectant family, a prospective adoptive family, you're on either end there, you're trying to get involved with your organization to figure out what are the next steps. How do they reach out to you guys? How do you get started with this process on either side?
Sure. And Google is my best friend. So if you go to Google and you literally just type in Down syndrome adoption, we're number one in the search. So that's a great way to do it. We do have a website, ndsan.org.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Facebook page. You just go to Facebook and you just type in NDSAN or DS Adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And that will get you, I believe it's DS Adoption on Facebook, will get you to our page.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go there and you like our page. And then, but if going to our website at ndsan.org will link you to our webinar. If you want to become an adoptive parent, it will link you to incredibly wonderful resources like the booklet that I had mentioned to you before we started for expectant parents. And I have that, you can download it or I can send you a hard copy. And so they can get all the information, expectant new parents can get all the information that they need from our website as well.
Wonderful. Yes. And I'll definitely include that in the show notes, the links to the website so families can find that more easily. So if somebody is hearing this podcast and like me is thinking, wow, this is just a really fantastic organization, how would they partner with you guys? What are some ways that they could partner with what you're doing?
Sure. We always love when people like our Facebook page because we do have kiddos in foster care with Down syndrome, and we feature those kiddos on our website, and then we share them on Facebook. And we would love for folks to share their pages because these are older kiddos that desperately need families. Mm-hmm. So that's one way if you want to do that. And of course, we always accept donations. We are a nonprofit program because we sit under the Down Syndrome Association of Greater Cincinnati, who's a nonprofit. And so, just to keep the lights on, like you had said, we always accept donations. But then also we do have a grant fund. We have an NDSAN adoptive family grant fund where you can donate directly to that fund. And when there's money in there, we provide $2,500 grants to our adoptive families to help them offset some adoption costs.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Well, I feel like we've covered this topic pretty well today in terms of just surface getting an idea of how the organization works and how it started and things like that. Is there anything more that we didn't talk about that you want to make sure that you fill us in on before we close our podcast today?
Yeah, we are always looking for adoptive families.
Okay.
Especially, if there's folks out there who are listening to you or who know you, that means they have some connection with Down syndrome. And, a lot of our families, if they are expectant or new families, when they decide, we want to make an adoption plan for our baby, the most requested parameter that they want out of an adoptive family is either that adoptive family already have a child with Down syndrome, or, some deep, long hands-on experience. So if you've got listeners out there who already have a child with Down syndrome, maybe this has just put a little, seed in their brain of like, oh gosh, this might be something we could look into. So we'd love to have more families who have that experience or who already have a child with Down syndrome.
Yes, that's wonderful. I think for those of us with family members with someone with Down syndrome, we know all of the joys that we have experienced. We also know sometimes the harder work that it may take sometimes, but boy, the joy when you get to the end of that and see how they succeed. I think that's a special feeling that we family members have definitely experienced. So I can understand why a family might say, oh, that would be a preference, because we having gone through that, it's something that definitely would be helpful for a prospective family too. So, well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us today and for all the work that you do. I mean, it's really something amazing to think of all of the families that have been positively impacted through the work that your organization and you have done. I appreciate you joining us today.
And thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.
Yes. And to our listeners, I hope that some of you have a little stirring in your heart, and maybe you'll want to reach out and get a little bit more information about NDSAN and perhaps how you can participate in any number of ways, as we were just sharing earlier. If there are topics that you would like us to cover, this was one topic that a family had requested, and hence we were able to get Stephanie on this podcast with us today. But if there are other topics you would like us to cover, please send us an email to downsyndromecenter@chp.edu. If you would like to partner with us and this work that we do, including this podcast, please go to www.givetochildrens.org/Down Syndrome Center. But until next time, bye-bye.